It is September already. 2022, September. How do we get here, Dane? My
It's
gosh.
crazy, man. This year's flying by.
Flying by, buddy. Flying by. I feel like you and I talk, on a pretty regular basis, but it's like um, next thing it's that project or that person, you haven't spent any time on it or you haven't seen that person, talked to that person in too long. Here we are at September. Christmas will be here soon, man.
It's crazy. Just in time for the new XR headsets, right?
That's right, right. So, we've been talking about this. We want to kind of get everyone to kind of chime in on this. So leave your comments in the feed. Love to hear what you guys have to say. But Dan and I have been talking about as we sit here in September 2022. It's a lot of hype. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of leaks around new headsets coming out. Who's going to do what? When's it going to happen? And the big picture, we want to hear you guys' comments, what you have to say about it, if you give a rip or not. But Dane, let's start with you. Are you hearing anything that you're excited about? What are your kind of thoughts about some of there's the hype that's going around right now about Cambria and Apple and all this
Pico.
stuff? Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So my perspective on it is obviously every time you improve the screen resolution, the quality of the experience gets better, right? But I would argue that like going to a much higher quality display from where we're at right now, like the Quest 2 is pretty good, right? And there's other devices on the market that have really high end displays, like Vario and others. And so yeah, I don't. I'm happy to see that kind of stuff improve, right? Because I think it helps the user adoption on it too. But really, it sounds funny, but a lot of the things that I'm really excited about aren't necessarily like. I mean, they're big kind of shifts, but they're not big like technological shifts, right? So what I mean by that is I'm excited about like the potential for pancake lenses, to make the headset smaller, right? But the funny thing, like I'm not excited about the pancake lenses from like a resolution perspective. I'm just excited because it's going to be lighter on the face, and I think people are going to be more interested in wearing that for longer. I'm excited about the potential for RGB cameras, right? Because the inside out tracking on the Quest for the last since the Quest came out has largely just been to track the environment and make sure you don't run into a wall or something.
Right.
Whereas I think it'll actually be a feature now, right? Like if I wanted to do a virtual desktop where I'm sitting in a hotel room, but I want to feel like I'm in my office with all of my monitors and things like that. Having passed through so I can see my desk, but the monitors are virtual above it, kind of thing, so I don't spill my coffee over when I'm going to interact with things or something. I think that that's a really important aspect of it. But like RGB cameras aren't anything new. I mean, they're new relative to the XR space, but like I mean, every smartphone has an RGB camera, so like none of this stuff is necessarily like a technological. I guess you could maybe argue that for pancake lenses, but like it's more of like we're getting a better understanding of the form factor that we want, and we're like fine tuning it to where it actually fits what the consumer needs, despite it not being like a huge jump. So anyway, what's your perspective,
No,
Scott?
I mean, let me ask you this. I mean, because something that comes to mind is I was having a conversation with my daughter Maddie. I think it was yesterday we were talking about this, and she asked me. She says, do you feel like VR is going to hit this time, right? It's going to get adopted, and if so, is it going to be the consumer side or the enterprise side? Which one's going to really kind of advance this? And I hear you talking about more the kind of utilitarian or kind of business side of VR, but maybe on consumer devices, right? I mean, because when you talk about traveling with your VR headset and having a home office while you're on the road in a hotel room, most people don't. Most people who buy consumers who buy VR headsets don't care about that. They care about Beat Saber and audio and that kind of stuff and the games and realism. I think there's like the consumer gaming side, there's the enterprise side that you and I both live in with regards to, training people and training experiences in factories or rugged environments, how to do boring stuff, right? But I think there's almost, it sounds like you've got some interest in, it's kind of in between, right? It's the utility side of consumer implementations of VR. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting point. I also think it's kind of funny, like how many markets are led by gaming, right? Like you think
Yeah,
about the personal
yeah,
computer, you think about smartphones, you think about like a lot of the things that are very pervasive in the society that we live in today started with gaming applications. Like when
that's not a bad thing.
no, no, I
We'll
mean, you
take it.
have to because it's like playing games is something that's like it's kind of human, right? Like
Yeah,
it's entertainment. And so it's good to start there because it gets everybody adopting it and using it. But I think like the real value gets delivered when the rubber meets the road, like on the industrial side. And I mean value from like a business perspective.
yeah,
Um, so that's kind of what's driving my interest. I also think like having RGB or like better camera system on the front of a lot of these headsets. Like I'm hopeful that you can do things like launch experiences from a QR code, or sign into a headset from a QR code,
yeah.
because the I don't know if you have the same experience, Scott, but like the typing experience on any XR device is uh,
Right.
not not at parity with computers at all.
Not till we get that tactile feedback like we've talked
Yeah,
about
or
on
you can
previous
use
podcasts.
those keyboards that are like
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah,
the yeah.
yeah.
So, but what's exciting to you about what you're seeing, or are you excited? Are you
You
kind of
know,
like are you the jaded old man now in the space that?
maybe, maybe. Hey, don't insult me, man. Don't call me
Hey,
jaded.
I'm saying that you're wise. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, no, yeah, I tend to look at things, and it's maybe it's a too narrow of a focus, but I tend to look at things, a lot of things are black or white to me, right? That device, I look at something like Magic Leap, and it's like, okay, you've got a cord hanging off that. It's tethered to a processor, or a device is tethered to, something you wear on your belt. Number one, I can't use that in a factory. I don't care about it. But
Mm,
and I tend to be that way to a fault. So I
mm,
tend to kind of partition off. Okay, VR, the Quest 2 and the Quest is kind of good enough for what we're doing in our factories, in my day job, in a training room for training experiences on, fire extinguisher training, or, fall protection, that kind of stuff. So I just kind of say VR is for the training room. It's good enough. But I think maybe that's not the right attitude to take, because you and I have talked about this, Dane. It's not it's not all about me or you, right? It's there's whole big ecosystem in XR, and I think if it's good for the industry, then it's good for all of us. The what is it? The
mm,
high tide rises all boats. I think it's
mm,
good for all of us as devices get smaller, as companies like Pico, Apple, Meta, even Magic Leap, Vario, as these companies are successful and they refine their products over time, it is good for all of us. It's good for the industry, which is good for us. It gives us credibility and adoption and momentum. I may not care about a lot of the aforementioned devices, but I do care about seeing XR more
mm.
widespread and adopted and mainstream. And I absolutely believe that's where we're going.
Yeah, well, so like, have you seen the newest interview with Zuckerberg on the Joe Rogan podcast?
I had that 3 hours and 25 minutes of Chuck and, JRE, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Well, so like, what's your perspective on like I think it's interesting. The thing that I will say, um, and I don't know that I would defend Zuckerberg very often, but I will say I was impressed with his ability to say uh, that he was surprised by certain applications, right? Like he
Mhm,
talked about
mhm.
sports, right? Like he never expected that like boxing and all
Yeah,
these kind of gamified workout platforms would
yeah.
become as big as they have as fast. Like what do you think would be a surprise application in enterprise that
In enterprise?
Yeah, they're
I don't
like,
know, because I was surprised as well to see Work Simulator be so popular.
yeah.
I've got a real life job. I'm not looking to simulate work. I mean, it's like if I want to go work at a fast food place, I could do that.
What
Um,
do you so what
I
do
was
you think
surprised
about,
by that.
imagine, so this is just a crazy thought that I had, sorry, but
Okay.
imagine like if in the future somebody gamifies, like essentially creates work simulator, but you're actually doing a job for somebody somewhere. And so like you're playing a game because you think it's fun and it's
Hmm.
gamified to a certain point, but it's actually driving it, some kind of thing on the back end running a business.
So you're inadvertently or unbeknowingly, you're actually, doing micro tasks or some sort of processing. So you are now like a cobot. You're now in your
Yeah.
game, you're outputting some actual work that's benefiting a business somewhere. That's
Yeah.
You heard it
Like
first here on XR at Work, folks.
no,
He
well,
brought it up.
well, like imagine like, in that situation, or like maybe it's just that like you could use that even on LinkedIn. Like you can imagine that there's some kind of game where if you get above a certain score, then you get a certification that you're, able to do XYZ.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I think that's where things get interesting because, in the past, like a video game, doing a task on a video game hasn't been a proxy for doing it in real life, right? Like
Right.
I love Call of Duty, but I would I would never
Me
try
too,
that,
man. Yeah.
kind of thing. And what's interesting to me about like this transition to VR is that it is a proxy because you're physically doing the task a lot of times. Now, I think it's going to depend on the task. Like if it requires you to lift 100 pounds and you do it in VR, that's if you can't do that physically in real life, then that
Yeah.
doesn't really transition one to the other. But I do think there will be some opportunities where things like Work Simulator are,
Hmm.
they teach you a skill set or whatever, and then you can contribute based on that. I think that's an interesting concept.
Absolutely. Where'd you get that one from? Did you come up with that?
It's you inspire me, Scott. That's all I can say.
No, I think about it from a different angle, though I love that, man. I think I've been spending a lot of time lately thinking about how do we take, because driving adoption at work, with the use of XR is a big thing for me lately. And how do we take and get folks incented to demonstrate a skill in VR, perhaps, um, that like in our job, I can hook my map my run or my run keeper or something up, and it pushes data up to the cloud. We have a platform at work that it transfers into points, kind of
Hmm.
like cash rewards, and I get a $25 gift certificate every month to Amazon because of my workouts, or
Mm-hmm.
because I went to the dentist or I went to a smoking cessation class or whatever. I think about the same sort of thing. I've been looking at it from the angle of how do we take some of that same thing, and so when you go certify on a skill in VR or go through a training simulation or do something that related to your job, how can we tie that back around and give you credits, give you, coins, as it were, in real life? How can we give you Amazon.com gift cards as a result of that? So I look at it maybe from kind of the carrot leading the horse, as opposed to, the virtual horse, being, providing work output like you mentioned. So I think there's a couple of ways. I think the sky's the limit, man. I mean, we
Yeah.
just getting into this deal, right?
Well, what I was just thinking about. Sorry, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't even know what we're gonna name this
Oh, you're on a roll today,
episode.
man. We're gonna let you
But
go.
I mean, like, imagine we get into like a real metaverse. Like, people are gonna do different things. Like, you're gonna
Hmm.
have an economy that kind of pops up, right? Like, whether or
Yeah.
not people get paid for the economy is one thing, but like, in order to run a society, if you will, like you have to have people that do all these different tasks. And like, it's interesting to think about like if someday people doing something in the metaverse will help expose them to things that they're excited about and will help them make career choices based on the things that they first tried out in the virtual setting.
Yeah, I mean, there's that company, I think it's called Transfer VR, that does, job simulation stuff, and they do it with like community colleges or Votech schools,
Hmm.
and you want to see what it's like to be a mechanic, we'll go in and do this kind of job simulator, and you may find that it's not for you, or kind of
Hmm.
exposures to different things for young people or someone looking for a career change. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, no, it's just interesting to me because like I think about, I mean, I feel like anybody before this technology has kind of been available. Like, in order to understand if you liked being a mechanic, you had to
Yeah.
go and find somebody who was willing to let you watch them be a mechanic and
Yeah.
do all these things. And like you can do it to a certain extent with like video now, but I also, there's a lot of statistics around like people are way more like they're apt to be uh over um like over confident that they can do things after they've watched it on video.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um and so like I just don't think that that video method translates well to like what it actually is like.
But I
But
think
I
there's but I think there's a use for that where like we've talked about at work doing, you know, career fair, someone or job fair, someone walks up and says, "Oh, I see you're looking for forklift drivers. I'm great at driving, a forklift. Oh, really? Here's this headset. Put this on. We want you to go through the simulator. Let's see how good you
yep,
are." So I think there's
absolutely.
same sort of
Well,
thing, right?
I also think this is kind of an interesting tool because it allows you to give kind of like proficiency tests, but like
Totally.
but it's proficiency like in a different way. And so like let's say the world moves away from the tradition of like everybody getting college degrees kind of thing, right? We've talked about this in other episodes where it's like, do you need a college degree to work in this space? I think
No.
pre-tests are going to be something that we probably move towards as a society, right? So I
Mhm.
don't care if you were a fireman before, if you can code in if you're also a Unity developer, like you don't have to have a degree in developing Unity, you just need to be able to show it to me, or
Right.
forklift or what whatever. I think that's an
Sure.
interesting concept.
Do you have the core skill sets, the propensity to be able to, the aptitude to be able to do this, even though that's not what your background says you've been doing, right?
Yeah, well, so I think there's two sides of it. I think it's can you test for ability beforehand, and then it's also accelerating the time frame to proficiency after
Mm.
hiring, right? So like I can provide you experiences that we couldn't otherwise provide you, and so you're going to learn this in 3 months instead of in 9
Yeah.
or something like
I'm over here playing checkers, man, and you're playing chess. You are on arms
that.
today, dude.
Yeah, I'm yeah, got me thinking about some crazy stuff. But yeah,
Deep
I mean,
thought.
so like I guess in the short term, get me off of this futuristic hype train here. In the short term, how do you see, like, do you think that there's going to be a point where it's like, okay, we don't buy a HoloLens anymore and we don't buy an Oculus anymore, we just buy the MR headset, because you kind of have the capability to do both with that? Like, do you see there at this point, do you think there'll be a consolidation, or do you think we're still a ways out from that?
I mean, I think we're a ways out, but I think the natural progression, right, is we went from a big giant computer underneath our desk that our employer was afraid to give us because they thought we would be, looking at inappropriate pictures all day on the interwebs. We've gone
Mhm.
from that to where laptop standard, you got to have it to do your job or to be in school or whatever. Now we're going to handheld devices. And I think the progression, right, is we're going from immobile, bigger devices to smaller mobile devices. And I think the progression is it goes to body worn devices, and those body worn devices, head mounted or body worn, wearables. I think the natural progression is the devices are going to get smaller, they're going to get thinner, they're going to get more lightweight, and that convergence, that I hear you talking about, where it's not a Quest in a training room and Google Glasses out on the shop floor. It's a device for both scenarios, right? With turn on, turn off, virtual, augmented, that sort of thing. I do think it's going to happen. I I think we're a ways out, but what's a ways? Who knows? I could sit here and say, yeah, I think we're 3 to 5 years away from a single device catching on and being the kind of standard. It could happen in 6 months for all I know. I mean, it's the way things are going, nothing surprises me, Dane. What do you think? Is it going to happen and quick?
Yeah, well, I mean, with Apple coming out, we know there's some
Apple.
device coming,
Oh,
right?
we've all seen the pictures. Yeah.
Yeah, we've all seen the pictures, we've seen the leaks. Like, you know,
Leaks. Yeah.
it's yeah, exactly. But I mean,
Oops.
we just don't know. Like, I would say they're the wild card in all this, because I do think that of everything that Apple does, form factor is what they nail every time,
Yeah.
right? Like, they make it smooth, they make it not frustrating. Like, that's kind of their forte, right?
The crap works,
And
man,
so,
and it's easy to use. Yeah.
yeah, my guess though is that their first headset's probably not going to be. I think it'll be good. Like, I think it'll be an excellent headset at
Yeah.
whatever they do, but I don't think it's going to be anything brand new. I think it's going to be, essentially an improvement on the best in market right now. Is would be my perspective, because
But are
I
you
don't.
worried about that? Do you feel like if a first pass by Apple comes out less than super amazing, you think is it gonna hurt our progression? Or is it just everyone's gonna have to kind of lighten up and realize that this is major electronics we're talking about here. It's not that easy to nail the first time.
Yeah, I think that there's too many Apple fans that I don't I think it'll disappoint the niche group of people like you and I, and all of our friends in this space.
Yeah.
But I think to the average consumer, like, there's people that buy you know $700 stands for their Macs,
Yeah.
because it's an Apple product. So I
Yeah.
think there's going to be there's kind of two benefits. I think Apple will make a really good product, whatever it is, and I think two, they'll have an installed fan base that will buy it regardless, because
Yeah.
it's an Apple product, and there's kind of a brand halo
Affinity.
around that.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you what I think, man. I think you've got low end and high end kind of ranges of in this industry, right? And there's there's certainly stuff on the fringes, but I think as long as the range keeps advancing, I think the that kind of median, that kind of middle tier, right, continues to advance as well. So it kind of pushes everything along. It's I
You
don't think
know,
they're going to do anything to hurt the batting average of XR.
no.
I think it's going to improve. The question is how much does it
Yeah.
improve it? But it's
Well,
just going to be a step in the right direction, no matter what they do. I think.
yeah, well, and like, the margin between the upper and the lower always converges over time, right? Like,
Yeah.
think about TVs, like,
Yeah.
even 15 years ago, it's like you had like the crazy expensive, like, flat screens that weren't
Yeah.
even really very flat, right? And
Yeah.
then you had like the bubble tube TVs or whatever. And then, everything kind of comes to, and now you can get TVs that are 8K for, $600 or whatever. And
You
it's,
got them at Walmart. Yeah.
70 inch. Yeah. So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it'll be a similar story. Um,
So there's a lot of hype around. There's different announcements, right? So you got Meta talking about Cambria. Apple's going to do Reality OS or whatever it is. The word on the street is they're going to call it. Google Glass is making a play again, or is it the new device or the same device? I don't know. Magically, Vario, Pico. I just got the 3, and now they're talking about the 4. I mean, anything that you're really just super excited about, or do you feel like it all just kind of ends up being, just kind of moving the needle a little bit?
yeah. So I would say that there's kind of three things that I'm really excited about. I think one would be the Apple announcement, whatever that is, because
Yeah,
I think that's been like the looming thing for years, right? Like, we've
right.
heard and heard that it's going to come out, and so I think that'll be like it'll benchmark everybody, right? We can say, okay, well, Apple feels like this is the benchmark for what they can do well, and I think that'll be valuable for the market. Um, I would say I'm interested in the kind of Pico Meta, battle going on there, as far as like the new headsets, if they have the pass through, RGB and all those different things. I'm interested in what that is going to look like, and also, like, as an add-on, it's not a hardware update, but like figuring out what is the enterprise plan for some of these, headsets? Like, I think Pico's done a decent job of, kind of talking through like, okay, it's more kind of open Android, manage it in this way. But like, we all know that, the Quest for Business got canceled, end of last year, and like there's been frustrations, there.
Yeah.
And so I'm ready for all of the management aspects of this to kind of get sorted out as well.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's good. Like from an enterprise perspective, we're just not in a good place
We're not.
for deploying.
We're not. I had someone reach out to me today about, hey, I want to show a bunch of stuff on a Quest 2 in a meeting at work, and it's like in a factory. I'm like, well, good luck with that, right? Because you're gonna have to side quest that thing. You're gonna have to side load that. You're not going to get on company Wi-Fi because we don't, necessarily allow, that device on our company Wi-Fi for security issues and blah, blah. So it's like, we're still struggling. I'm looking, my OFB, I got it up there, it's like, and I've got 15 or 20 of them in the field. We're not using them, and it's not been super easy. But what about Manage XR and Arbor XR and these guys, or is there,
Yeah.
are they going to help out with that? Can any one of them jump in and solve that problem?
Yeah, so I think both of them have done a really great job of building a good platform, to help manage devices. I think the problem though is that they can't fundamentally. It comes back down to a consumer device on Meta has T's and C's for consumers,
Yes.
and Arbor and Manage, like they can't change that, right? Like that's a native software thing on the headset. And so again, like I think the dominoes have to start falling with Meta to at least give a direction on where some of these things are going.
Yeah, it's an interesting time, man. It's an interesting time. I was telling my daughter yesterday, I think this is one of the greatest times, I think, to be in technology. It feels to me like, well, it feels to me and your dad like back in the mid 90s, when the information superhighway was getting fired up and people were building websites. It's a great time to be here. And I think you guys like you and I are maybe a little spoiled. We're a little tough to impress with some of this stuff, but I think there's some good changes coming up. I'm optimistic, and I hope you are too, Dane.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I think about, and just to take a slight tangent, like I think about, like there's so many areas of society where being able to connect people in a way that doesn't rely on them being in the same location is going to be really valuable, right? And so I'm super inspired every day by all the things that are happening in this space, and the fact that there's so many smart people and large businesses throwing money behind moving this stuff forward. So absolutely, I'm optimistic, and like I don't mean to sound jaded when we talk about some of these things, and maybe I sound underwhelmed, but I just think it's pragmatic to think about what does this really mean for us, and you know and at least especially in the XR at work community, right, make sure that we're communicating a realistic timeline on things,
right,
as we progress. So
well, I'm going to encourage everyone. Like I just had the bet. Look at my new little ticker I got here, right? Tell us what you think in the comments below. As we sit here in September 2022, a little bit about what Dan and I think. I'm an old crabby dude. He's jaded, but we're optimistic about what's happening. I think next month at AES is going to be a new opportunity to see some new advancements from vendors. I know you went to AWE last fall and came back with some good insights and maybe some renewed optimism and a neat perspective. We've got an episode on XR at Work about that. I think next month will be good for the industry at AES. What do you think?
Oh yeah, I'm super excited, and I would encourage you guys too. So Scott and I both got XR at Work shirts. So
we do.
We have our branded XR at Work T-shirts. So if you see us walking around with our XR at Work T-shirts on, or otherwise, feel free to come stop and say hi. We'll actually be doing kind of live. Sorry, we'll be doing live recording of various things that we find interesting, and talking to some of our friends in the space. So if you're interested in being a guest on X Artwork or hearing more about that, let us know as well.
So, man, Dane, it's good to talk to you. I'm excited about things that are going to happen in the near future in some of these releases, and I'm excited about AES, like I know you are, and getting to see some of our friends. We appreciate the community. Dane, I appreciate you, and I'm glad that we had this opportunity to get together, and I learn a lot from you every time we talk. Thank you very much.
Yep, right back at you, Scott.
All right, talk to you
Catch us next
soon.
time. Yep,
All right.
see ya.